Let's face it, there are so many stories about money myths that simply aren't true. And the interesting thing is that if you don't already have money, it's easy to see how somebody could fall into a trap of either believing them or saying, I have no idea what's true or not. And so the most important thing you got to do if you want to get on the track to creating a financially free life you love is you got to understand the difference between what's a myth and what's reality. And today we're going to dive into that. Because the problem is a lot of these money myths keep us broke. And I think sometimes people create them, hopefully it's not to be manipulative, but in a way to get you to do what they want you to do. And what I want you to do is I want you to take the action you need to take so you can create a financially free life you love. And if you achieve that objective, we are going to be happy. But the reality of it is, perhaps somebody's selling something or somebody is trying to get you to do something, or somebody just interviews somebody for an hour and they think because they've talked to them for a few minutes, it's reality. I don't want that to be you, and I don't want you to fall into that trap. So what you're going to find is that when you start understanding the difference between what's really a myth and what's reality, it's going to be a lot easier to create a financially free life you love, and it's also going to make financial decisions a lot easier. So you're going to love the insider secrets I'm going to share with you today that are going to really propel you forward. And if you are an advisor or a coach, it's going to help you with your clients. So you're going to love today's episode. So I'm Annette Ba'u. I'm founder of MillionaireSeries.com and host of the Millionaire Insider. For over 30 years, I've been advising and researching the top 1% and 2% of millionaires to learn what millionaires with amazing lives do differently. And now I'm providing you practical, easy to implement insights so that you can create a financially free life you love. And today we're diving into money myths that keep you broke. So before we dive in, please click subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified of future episodes. All materials, forms, and intellectual property are copywritten by the MillionaireSeries.com. The information I provide is not intended to replace any financial, tax specialist, any investment, any type of planning or healthcare advice. You got to check with your own qualified advisors. You agree to hold MillionaireSeries.com and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved, and all international copyrights are reserved. So let's dive in. For today's show notes, go to MillionaireSeries.com/1010. For all show notes, go to MillionaireSeries.com/WLI. So money myths that keep you broke. The first one is that money doesn't bring you happiness. Now, that is so true, right? But neither does poverty. Now, I've lived with money and without, and I will just say this much. Having money makes life a heck of a lot easier. So money's not going to bring us happiness. It wasn't intended to. But again, neither does being broke or bankrupt or worrying about money or not having enough in retirement. So we've got to let go of that. What we've got to understand is that if you live in a civilized country, you got to have money. So we got to create a plan to get money. But we also have to understand that there are a lot of things that money can buy that make our lives easier and ultimately make us happier. So myth number one. All right. So before we dive in, you can go to MillionaireSeries.com/WL-guide to download our Wealthy Life Formula. This provides you the step-by-step of what you need not only to create a financially free life you love, but what to do to create a richer and more fulfilled and happy life. So again, MillionaireSeries.com/WL-guide. The next myth is money will change me. So this is what I have found, and I have found this over and over again, and I am going to say a word that is potentially a cuss word, so I want to warn you in advance. But money brings out more of who we are. So if we're already a really great person, we're going to become an even better person. If we're already a royal a-hole, I won't completely cuss, it's going to bring out more of that. And what's so funny, in my 30 plus years, I have seen this proven over and over again. Somebody gets money and they can become a real jerk. Somebody who's a really good person, they get money and they just become a better person. So it's not going to change you. It's going to bring out more of who you are. So if you are, I want to say if you're not a nice person, but if you're watching this, you obviously are a nice person. But what you got to do is you just got to work on yourself, work on your inner game so you can become the person you're capable of being. I talk a lot about the worth barometer and the grid, and I share that, I lived below the grid for a long time in my life. I had no idea how bad gossip and, win, lose, lose, win, just lacking responsibility, all of that was until I really started analyzing the data I had collected and really learning that the real goal is to live above the grid so you can have an amazing life. I mean, money is nothing if you don't have an amazing life. So be really clear on that. The other thing that's really important is to understand that with more money comes more responsibility. And I'm having this conversation a lot with my son who just turned 17 and he's approaching 6'5", and he is large. I mean, he's like big. And it's so funny because with this, he's always been a fairly good sized boy, but just a couple years ago, we were looking eye to eye, and now it's kind of like he's taller than, 2 inches taller than my husband, who at his height was at 6'4". He's probably now about 6'3". And I continue to remind him of that too. With great success comes great responsibility. With great height and being really good size comes responsibility. We have these God-given talents that we get. And I think the most important thing we can do is really use those for good and realize that we don't want to show up or leave and somebody's like, that guy was such a jerk. And if that is a person's goal, then great. Let them go and be in the jerk world. The reality for most of us is we want to be the best we can be, and we want to show up at our best, and we want to be really contributing. That, in my opinion, is so important. So it's not that money is going to change you. It's going to bring out more of who you are. Oh, one of my favorite ones, money doesn't matter. So this is true if you live in an uninhabited island with no money. True story. In my son's school that could not afford to go on the trip to California because his parents couldn't afford it until all of us pitched in so that he could. Look at somebody who has cancer. Do you want the best treatment or do you want to have to go to a substandard treatment? The reality of it is money does matter, whether it's to pay for medical expenses, meaning if you need an alternative therapy, or you want to send your kids or grandkids to the best school, or you want to take that dream vacation. Money does matter. And the reality of it is I have never seen somebody who's gone into retirement or lost a spouse who said, I just have too much money. Things cost money, and that's why we've got to get really clear money does matter. But we've got to have a perspective of it. The next myth is that more money will solve my challenge. Ooh, I love that one. On the surface, it seems to be true, right? You know, you're in the broke group and you think, if I can only get more money, right? But the issue is that broke is an inner game issue to begin with. I'm not saying there's not some outer game issues and some strategy, but it's really an inner game issue because money is energy. So you're not attracting money, it's really an energy. And it's really a worth barometer issue. You know, more money is not going to solve the issue. The first thing you got to do is you've got to create your formula, a solid foundation, a winning strategy, and then you've got to consistently execute. So all three are critical components, but you got to begin with that foundation. Sadly, this condominium that just crashed in Florida, 136 units and 55 of them just gone. We understand how critical it is to have a solid foundation, right? Same thing is true with our money. Same thing is true with our business plan. I share a story of a skyscraper that was back in New York, and they started seeing cracks on the 15th floor. They called in a structural engineer. The first thing he did is went down to the basement. Goes in the basement, they find out they have a silent partner. The night security guard decided he was going to build a garage at his house, and he goes, why should I pay for all these bricks when there's all of these here? And it worked really great until it no longer worked. Once he got to a certain point, it started compromising the structural integrity of the building. Thank goodness they figured it out before anything happened. But if you don't have a solid foundation, you got a problem. And the issue with money is that you're going to end up living a miserable life during retirement, when oftentimes your health is compromised. Oftentimes you want to go do things with friends you can't do. You know, you're worried about money when you should be relaxing and enjoying all of your hard working and all the years that you contributed. So don't let yourself fall into that one. I can save later. Oh, I love this. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. What if you become disabled or you get divorced or you have a major medical expense? The best time to save is yesterday, and the second best time to save is today. So just start. I don't care how much money you're saving. When I started, okay, I had no money. I literally got together $20,000 to put a down payment on my home. And it was an assumable home, back when they had assumable homes. And I mean, that was like all my money. And I had a very, very small emergency fund. And I started saving $25 a month. That's how it all began, $25 a month, and the rest is history. So don't discount it. Now, if you're not good at, say, saving monthly, start saving daily. Some people save their change. Some people save their ones. Some people save their fives. Just make it a habit and do it consistently. Oh, this one just kills me. My spouse or partner handles the money. That, to me, is one of the biggest red flags I've ever seen. Now, I'm not saying your spouse, be it a woman or a man, is maybe better at money, or they might think they are. But what happens when your spouse tells you that everything's okay and then they die? Well, I'll tell you, this woman was in my class and she shared, yeah, my husband said everything's taken care of, so I just never worried about it. He loved that and I didn't really want to deal with it. So he dies, and she starts going through things, and she didn't really know what to do. He's like, yeah, I have a checklist, you don't know everything you need to do. Well, literally, a year after the probate closed, so during probate, you've got to disclose all the assets, she finds this shoebox in the back of a storage closet. Like, she's like, how would I have ever even known to look there? And it had the to-dos, the checklist of everything she needed to do. She found 2 more life insurance policies. She found some stocks. She found some bearer bonds. It was a nightmare. Probate had already closed. It was an absolute disaster. She ended up having additional legal fees, and she said it was just an entire disaster. Don't let that be you. Now, I'm not saying you have to be an expert and you have to be analyzing stocks, but what you do need to do is know where you are. I can't tell you how many people get divorced and they're like, I thought we had money. And yeah, we live in the big house, but we've got debt up the yin-yang. We've got credit card debt. We've got this debt. And I'm like, how could you have gotten to this point? Well, you get to that point by not paying attention. The reality of it is that we as women are the ones that are more likely to have to deal with that, because typically we outlive our partners or our spouses. But the reality of it is that we've just got to know things are taken care of. One of the things I learned in my practice over 30 years of advising people is that when a couple would come to one of my classes, 9 times out of 10, it was because the woman made him come, even if he was the primary breadwinner. And he would be there going, how can I get out of this class? How can I get out of this class? And what oftentimes we'd find is that he would think things were taken care of. He oftentimes wanted them to be taken care of, but rarely were they. And by just being aware of what was in place and what wasn't, it allowed him to fix that so it didn't become a crisis once something happened to either one of them. Oh, this one's good. I'm too old. It's just like being too young, right? The best time to save is yesterday. The next best time is today. There's nothing exciting about being broke unless you have a dream of living in a mobile home. I look at where our second home is, which has $1 million homes and very nice homes. And then across the freeway is the mobile home park. And some of those places are so small, I would bet some of them don't have air conditioning. And I'm like, maybe that's a dream if you're traveling around the world. I don't know if it is if you can only afford to go a few hours out of where you live. The reality of it is it's a lot more fun when you have money and you don't have to worry about it. When we took an RV trip, we decided to go up the West Coast. And I remember I was really concerned because my kids were little and I had never been just nonstop with them for 3 weeks with no break. And I was thinking, I wonder how this is going to go. Well, it was just a wonderful time. But we met a couple who had this to die for RV. And we were like, where are you going? They're like, we're going to go as far as we can until we run out of money. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, it was that summer where gas prices were almost $6 a gallon. We got literally, I must have gotten 24 calls from my credit card company asking if our credit card had been stolen, because literally we spent over $5,000 on gas. It was insane. I mean, we'd be going up the hill and I'd be like, oh, we just spent $5, we just spent $100. It was crazy. But the reality of it is there's nothing fun about that. And so what they were doing is they knew they were keeping track of how much money gas cost them. Once they got to the point where they couldn't afford it and they only had enough to get them back home, then they were going to turn around. And I thought, God, that doesn't sound like very much fun. The same thing is true about being a greeter or being a parking lot attendant. unless that's your life ambition, it's not fun. So let's start a plan now, regardless of your age, and stick to it and enjoy the process. And amazing things happen when you do that. This is a good one. I deserve to spend money. I work hard. So one year I was a spokesperson for the local FPA, and so various news channels would come and interview me on topics, and they actually hired me into going into 2 different families who were having financial trouble. And one of them seemed like they really did want to know. Like, one of the things, they didn't do Starbucks, but they did the big Slurpee drink at Circle K. And he's like, it's only $1. Well, when you're doing 4 a day, that's $4 plus tax. And we started adding up the money. He's like, God, I had no idea how much money that was. And I thought it was just interesting because it was just like he was focusing in on the dollar, not the $4 times 30, 120 times 12. And on some days it was even more than that. But the woman I went into, who was just a delightful woman, but her entire mantra was, I deserve this. Now, she was divorced, and it had been a challenging divorce, but she deserved the rims on her car. She deserved the big screen TV. And I remember the anchor, who actually I became friends with, and she said, well, don't you think we all work hard? Don't you think we all kind of feel like we deserve to have perks and to have benefits and to have luxuries? And she's like, well, yeah. And she goes, well, that's part of life, is that, you work hard, you save, and then you also have some benefits. But what was fascinating was that she's like, well, I don't cook. And we were like, well, why don't you cook? And then the anchor shared that she would go buy a big piece of salmon from Costco and cook it, slice it up, and then she'd have like salmon and cottage cheese for lunch. So she was giving her ideas. What was interesting and what came out was that her entire focus of gratification was right here, right now. It's kind of like the marshmallow test. I want it right now, and I don't have an ability to wait. I want you to enjoy your life, and you should enjoy your life. That said, I want you to make sure that a top priority is not only enjoying your life now, but being able to enjoy it when you're in retirement, when you're old. And that requires you have discipline and that you're putting some of that money away. Interestingly enough, a lot of our friends have made more money probably over the years than we have. And yet, our net worth is, significantly more than a lot of them. Why? It's just because of the choices we've made. We have not spent money like they spend money. It's just fascinating to me how you watch people, how they either don't save or how they spend a ton of money, and it's not ideal. So what I want you to get clear on is, we get this, our prefrontal cortex has a great idea, our limbic brain saying, no, I want to buy it. Just like a little kid, go do it now. We've got to work to integrate the two, and we got to work to have the discipline and the focus on what we want our retirement to look like. There's nothing fun about being broke in retirement, and I've never met anyone in the tens of thousands of people I have advised, and probably the hundreds of thousands of people I've spoken to over my career, that said, I just have too much money in retirement. No one ever shares that. I can't save. This is a good one. So it's almost like we're born with DNA, like we're either good savers or we're not. It's not. It's a habit. It's a neural pathway. It's something that we learn and something we can change. And what we got to do is we got to rewire those neural pathways. It takes 18 to 254 days, on average 66 days. How do you do it? You start with one step. Create one habit. All right, instead of going to Starbucks every day, I'm going to go 3 times a week. Instead of buying something right now, I'm going to go and I'm going to wait for 3 days, and then I'm going to follow the 3-day rule. I'll link to the 3-day rule in the show notes, but that's so powerful. You just have to start shifting and changing those habits, and the 3-day rule will help a lot. This is a good one. I'm too busy. It looks like from the picture they're more than just busy, they're unorganized. But whether you're too busy, unorganized, or exhausted, overwhelmed, stressed, multiply that by 100, and that's how it's going to feel when you retire broke. Nothing fun about retiring broke. You got to make planning a priority, and what you're going to find is that by slowing down, you actually get more done. And also hiring somebody. You can either hire a financial coach, which is going to just help you with the mindset and getting clear on what you need to do, or a financial advisor that's going to actually help you create a financial plan, manage your money, and purchase insurance and other products. So you got to decide what you need, but the real goal is to get really clear that You've got to make it a priority of what you want to achieve so that you can start implementing it now. It's never too late to start. All right, so let's look at an overview. The first thing you got to do is go back and review these 10 myths and really look at them. Identify the top 3 that you believe are affecting you, and then prioritize those, meaning which is the most important you can start working on, the second and the third. For example, if you feel too old, find a support group or a mentor who can help you create a plan and help hold you accountable. Make it fun. It doesn't have to be drudgery to deal with money. It's like a puzzle. It's just the problem is women, we've been told all our lives that we're not as good. We're not as good at engineering. We're not as good at money. We're not as good at so many different things. It's like baloney. Women are actually better because we have more patience and more stick-to-itness. So don't discount yourself on that front. All right, so let's look at a couple tips to building wealth. These are just to give you a few more tips. Start where you are and treat it like a game. Create a plan and then consistently execute it. Start saving each month. If you're not good at saving each month, save each day, even if it's just your change. Determine what you want your retirement to look like. Where are you going to live? How are you going to support it? Write out your goals, I am or I active verb format, and then say them, speak them, listen to them, read them, all of that. Less is more. You got to simplify your life. Junk doesn't bring happiness, and neither does poverty. What we got to do is we've got to figure out what we want, and then we've got to execute on it. That's how you create a richer and more fulfilling, happy life. So my friends, you got this. Just do it. So again, you can download our Wealthy Life Guide by going to millionaireseries.com/WL guide. But this guide literally walks you step by step through how to create a formula, what you need to do so you can create a financially free life you love. Free resource, and it is worth its weight in gold. It took me years to figure that out. For today's show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/1010. For all show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/WLI. So thank you so much for joining me for Money Myths That Keep You Broke. I'm Annette Bau, host of the Millionaire Insider. All international copyrights are reserved. So there you have it. It wasn't that difficult. I gave you a lot of myths. And now what I want you to do is just go back and start working on one and then the second. And before you know it, you're going to have this handled. And you're going to be going, yes, I'm on my way to creating a financially free life I love. That, my friends, is my goal to you. So before you go, click the link above. We've specifically designed that to help you on your next stage. And I'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye for now.